Hello, guys. It's Mark Zucker, Mr. Sci-Fi. I'm in my astronaut shirt today, and lots been happening. I was just at Comic-Con, and it was really a lot of fun. I've been posting some videos from there, and many other things. And I'm about to go to the Star Trek convention tomorrow via the Great Metal Bird, and I'm expecting to have a good time there as well because I see a lot of people I know and like, and get to hobnob with my fellow wizards. And so we're doing another live stream during the final days of the Kickstarter campaign. The Kickstarter campaign right now is at $24,000 and change. We have to hit 50,000 within 7 days. So we've got a journey ahead of us, but it's not an impossible road. And so I am confident we will achieve that. We'll see who joins us on today's live stream. If it's nobody, I'll just keep talking and telling you my philosophy of life, and we will talk about that. But one thing we haven't done recently is my history of science fiction. I was doing history of science fiction films, so I want to get back to that very soon because it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy sharing the knowledge I have on that subject with you guys. Beyond that, oh, hello, Clarence. It's good to have someone paying attention. Feel free to ask questions as we go. But what we are doing now is we're going to be shooting on Space Command August 26th, 27th, and 28th. We're building a two-story spaceship set, command deck, and it's very, very cool. We're working on the production draft of the script and banging away on that. And I'm the new edition of the Guillermo del Toro book is going to be coming out very soon. When I wrote with Guillermo del Toro, and beyond that, we're getting ready to start doing the five pilots for the Showrunners Network, and we're continuing to shoot Elaine's movie. So it's pretty cool in general. It's funny that when I go to conventions and when I look at all the dealers' merchandise in the dealers' room, it's sort of like my past. Uh, Waves hello, because I'll see things from Smurfs or He-Man or Super Friends or Real Ghostbusters or Star Trek or Deep Space Nine or any of the shows I've written for, any of the many 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 shows I've written for, and even some of the really really obscure ones. You'll see bootleg copies being sold of DVDs like uh, Space Precinct, for instance, or Forever Night. Some of those shows. So it's cool. It's cool. I'm really glad that I work in an art form that lasts because so many things are just of the moment and they don't have any kind of staying power. And so it's neat to be in an art form that actually does have a little bit of shelf life. So though it is surprising to me how people nowadays don't remember some of the older science fiction writers. They don't know the history of science fiction. I'm glad that I'm able to provide that because I do feel strongly that there is a continuity, there is an evolution, there is a this connects to that. And if you haven't seen the video I recently did about my wall, it was very fun to do that because I could talk about all these great people who have inspired me and whom I've gotten to be mentored by and have be friends with, like Carlin Ellison and Ted Sturgeon and Ray Bradbury and so forth. And I always love sharing those memories and those amazing people that I had come through my life and who taught me. And they were really remarkable. And they came from a time when science fiction wasn't a popular medium. They came from a time when if you got $1,000 for a novel, you were lucky. You might get paid a penny a word or 2 cents a word. Hello, Kwame. Good to see you guys. And this live stream will be archived, so those who aren't here for any part of it can see it later. The main message, of course, is we're shooting at the end of August. We're selling shares in Space Command, selling shares in the Showrunners Network, and we're doing the Kickstarter campaign. And right now, the Kickstarter campaign is at 24,000, and we need to get to 50,000 by a week from now. And we have 7 days, and so the press is on, and I think we can do it. And if anyone who buys Space Command shares, that'll count if you put that money in the campaign you get all the perks, and you get to be to have shares in Space Command. So that's pretty cool. Um, yes, thanks, Clarence. I noticed the comment about radio content. I love radio. I love radio drama and comedy too. I'm a big Jack Benny fan, but uh, but it's a great art form. And the first thing that I wrote that was broadcast to the public was actually a satirical radio play called Lobotomy that satirized science fiction conventions and science fiction movies and TV shows and authors and books. And you can actually find it here on Mr. Sci-Fi. I did it, wrote it, performed in it, directed it when I was 18 years old. So you can tell that I am definitely consistent in my enthusiasms. And I also love Journey into Space, and I love X Minus One and Dimension X, and so many great radio shows. It was really a wonderful art form, and it's funny that it faded away here in America. It stayed as an ongoing art form in England, but now with podcasts, you're getting radio back, drama and comedy and all of these things back as podcasts, and I think that's terrific. Though those, they're of extremely variable quality, but I suppose that was true of network uh, radio back in the day. So all one can do is one's best and put it out there and see what happens. But yeah, radio is a lot of fun. In fact, we actually did a Space Command radio play that's a prequel. It's called United Planet. And we had our entire cast: Doug Jones, Bob Picardo, Mira Furlan, Bill Mumy, everybody, and we are combining it now with the comic book into a graphic novel, into an animated graphic novel, which is it's basically like an animatic storyboard, and we'll be releasing that very soon. We're almost done with it. We're very, very close now, which is very exciting. Tahani Farr is the artist on that storyline, and our cover artists have included the great Ian McCaig and William Stout and Tahani herself. So it's cool. And yeah, and good to see your name there, Bruce. Obviously, if people have questions about anything I've written or anything I've done or anything I've said, or you know general general comments here and there, I'm happy to answer them. One thing that all of us science fiction writers feel strongly, I think, is that we could never, ever, ever have predicted the last decade, how wildly careening it has been. And additionally, we had given up on ever having a needle-nosed silver spaceship in the real world, that lands tail first. And there we are. There we are. It's a shame Elon Musk has gotten quite so extreme of late. I'm going to be writing him a letter soon to say, tone it down, get back, put your attention back on Mars. But he's definitely in the Heinlein mold of the rich guy who funds space exploration. So we'll see where that leads us, where it leads us in time. So, but meantime, it's fascinating because I've been watching. They had a great presentation on Alien Romulus at Comic-Con. I'm going to be talking about that in the Mr. Sci-Fi video very, very soon. Let's see. Did I ever do a book on Twilight Zone radio dramas? Are they original stories? No. No to both. Most of them, I believe, if not all of them, were written by, what was his name? He was a science fiction writer. It'll come to me. I knew him. And he was a protege of Charles Beaumont's. And the challenge, of course, would be that he would be taking essentially a half-hour story and expanding it to an hour radio play. So I've only heard a few of them. I'm not a big fan of them, though I certainly am not down on anyone who is a fan. I think they did the initial Twilight Zone episodes, then they did some original stories or stories that were adaptations from other sources. But again, I hadn't paid close attention to it. And I'm much more interested in original material rather than those adaptations. But there's a great radio adaptation, audio adaptation of the screenplay that William Gibson wrote of Alien 3. He did a completely different version of the movie. It has nothing to do with convicts or any of that stuff. And it's much better than the movie that was made. And you can find it on Audible. In fact, on Mr. Sci-Fi, I think a fan took the graphic novel of that William Gibson story and combined it with the audio drama into an animatic. And I think I'd put that up on Mr. Sci-Fi. If you type in Alien 3, you should be able to find it. Let's see. Geek Truth 64 says, I recently realized you wrote a couple episodes of the Animorphs Nickelodeon show back in the 60s. Was surprised to see your name pop up when I rewatched the show. Yeah, well, actually, it's even more interesting than that. I was hired to develop that series into a TV show. So I flew to New York. They hired me, based on my pitch. And right after that, I was hired on Sliders. So actually, I was hired on Sliders as a writer producer. So um, I was hired to write all the outlines for Animorphs and a number of scripts that would set the tone. I think I wrote around four of them, maybe four or five of them. And I read something like 15 of the books, which I liked very much. But I realized that the producers were going to have an enormous challenge because it had so many animals in it. And I never saw the show. I never, I was making Sliders and writing for DS9 and writing the Magic Time novels, and so I would get up early in the morning, write an outline for Animorphs, fax it to New York, and then, do my job as a producer on Sliders all day long. So, so it was a busy year, but I was proud of the work I did on Animorphs, and I very much liked the books. I liked the idea. It was about children who can turn into um, animals, and it was written the book. But again, the challenge was that one of the strengths of the books was that you could be first person through the senses of an animal, and that was very, very interesting. Whereas you really couldn't do that aspect of it in a TV show. But even so, it was certainly a fun challenge and one that I embraced. Let's see. Can you talk about your project with Dan O'Bannon? I might have his name wrong. Yeah, Dan O'Bannon is one of my favorite science fiction writers. He is the writer who came up with Alien, and also did Total Recall, many wonderful scripts. I first became aware of him when he was writing and starring in Dark Star, which John Carpenter directed, and I think they may have co-written it. And it was a student film. They were students at USC, and then it got picked up and they expanded it to a feature. And it was written about in Cine Fantastique, a magazine that dealt with science fiction, film, and so forth back then. And it was years from when I read the article about it to when it finally came out. And I really thought it was a great fun. If you've never seen Dark Star, it's got its rough edges, but it's still quite wonderful. And so then Dan collaborated with Ron Shusett, who was the brother of my friend Gary Shusett, and they sold Alien, and it's one of the great movies of all time, of course. And there's lots of twists and turns in how that got developed and produced and so forth. But then I heard that there were many projects that Dan O'Bannon had written that had never gotten made. So I reached out to his widow, and I actually went and visited her, and she gave me a number of his projects, and I thought they were great. I read through them, and they were quite wonderful. We didn't come to an agreement yet where I'll be adapting them. So down the road, if we do a second slate on Showrunners Network, I may well do one of O'Bannon's pieces because I thought it was terrific. There was one called The Men that posited that certain men in power were actually uh, creatures, evil alien creatures in disguise, and it was very, very extreme, let us say, but very, very good. And so, we'll see if that comes to fruition someday. Let's see. Geek Truth 64 says, I love the Animorphs books and the TV series for what it was. I appreciate you taking the time to answer my question and talk about it. Sure, happy to. I always love talking about the shows that I wrote for that are not generally brought up. I mean, it's always, I'm always talking about Twilight Zone or Star Trek or Babylon 5 or Space Command, and I don't mind any of that. But it's also fun sometimes to talk about Space Precinct or, some of the other ones I did that are a little less well known. Black Star was a cartoon that I wrote for Michael Reeves, and I think I wrote all of them. But it was really great fun to write for that show. Let's see. They say a film is born in the cut, the edit, but I bet if you write well, there's not a lot of cutting needed. No, that's not accurate, Mr. Wood and Mr. Tin. Interesting name. Uh, Film and TV are collaborative art forms. The reason I'm not a novelist, I can write novels and I think I'm pretty good at it, but uh, it's too solitary. It doesn't fit my nature. I love collaboration. I love working with actors and editors and designers, art directors, concept artists, all that stuff. I love coming up with something. There's a great quality of surprise, but I very much want to be at the top of the food chain. I don't want anyone to supersede me, and so I'm very happy in the work I'm doing now, and so the edit really is the final draft of the script, because there editing is an enormous process. It's an enormous part of the storytelling of TV and film. You you know you can write a script, but no matter how you describe things and how you hope things to be realized, until you see the performance, until you see the visual design, until you see um, how it's edited and the sound design and the color mix and all of that stuff, color correction, the score, of course, you're not going to really know what that final beast is. And so I think it's vital. That's why we have Dave Edison is on our staff full time, because we really need his collaboration on Space Command and everything we do. So yeah, it's there's no such thing as a script that is actor proof or director proof or editor proof. They can all ruin it, and they all have to really bring a lot of artistry and skill to make it work, to make it good. But if the script is lousy, you're going to have a very hard time getting a good movie out of that. I mean, I sort of like Alien Romulus, I'm sorry, Alien Covenant and Prometheus. They're not good movies really, or good stories really, but they're beautiful and they have some interesting performances. And I tend to watch them with the sound off, but but that's an example of scripts that might not work as a whole, but certainly have great pieces. So there's that. So let's see. Delicate question. Did you find your dog? No, and no, Bruce. It's been almost a year since Rudy ran away from the dog sitter, and we never found him. We're going to put signs out where he ran away, and in the hope that maybe someone took him in, and maybe they'll return him. But that would be great. Hi, Galinda. Good to see your name pop up. It's been a while. Now, as I said earlier, we do have a Kickstarter campaign going, and it's at 24,000. We have to hit 50,000 by 7 days from now. Now, if you can only throw like 100 or 200 bucks our way, that's significant. That's meaningful, because a little, little bits of movement convince other people to pledge, convince other people that we're going to get to the finish line. So just to let you know, and Bruce, thanks for your sympathy. Rudy was a great dog, and I certainly hope someone took him in and is treating him with a great deal of love and affection. It was really rough. It's the first time I've ever lost a dog and didn't get it back in short order. So really really sad. But beyond that, everything else is good. The Space Command's coming along really really well, and the conventions, I always enjoy seeing the fans, and the Star Trek convention should be a lot of fun. And we're shooting August 26th, 27th, 28th. And if anyone wants to have an acting role in Space Command, you can do that with our Kickstarter campaign. So, and if there's a perk you'd like that isn't on the campaign, just email me at markzickery@gmail.com. Happy to provide one. We just put out a Rod Serling t-shirt that I drew that portrait of Rod when I was 16, and this is to celebrate his 100th birthday, which is this year, Christmas Day, in fact. So that's now available on the Kickstarter page, and it's only like 30 bucks, so that's actually quite a deal. And so I think that it'll be fun for people to be walking around wearing those. Um, and essentially, the fun part, by the way, about making these shows is that, they live in my head sometimes for years, and then when you're able to actually make them and make them real, share them with millions of people around the world, it's just so fun and so cool, and I just love that part of it. And it's I mean, I think fortunately I'm fairly outgoing, and I really like people, but so all of this stuff is just fun. Let's see, what's your message retracted? Okay, I'll keep an eye out for it. um the presentation on Alien Romulus, by the way, I'm looking forward to that movie very much. It may not be good, I don't know. The clips look very good, but where a lot of the Alien movies, the later Alien movies, fail, of course, is in the characters. They're not engaging, or they're just kind of doing dumb stuff. Alien Romulus takes place between the first Alien movie and the second. So it's an entirely new cast of young people. I was very surprised because in the trailers they have sort of this Cockney accent. There's something in the water. There's something in the water. And I found out that three of those actors actually have that accent. So, that was a surprise because usually when you have a fairly extreme accent, the actors are putting it on for the movie or the TV show. But there you go. But the panel at Comic Con was very engaging. I'll show you. Hang on. I'll show you what they gave out to all 6,000 attendees of the panel. It's really cool. Hold on a second. I'm coming. I'm coming. They gave all of us our very own face hugger. And it's a mask. And so you can put it on like this and walk around like it. So it's really a cool thing. Imagine you have 6,000 of those at Comic Con. Wow. That was pretty cool. One thing that was disappointing about Comic Con was that they had hired me to write an article commemorating Rod Serling's 100th birthday. And every year before at Comic Con, they print up the souvenir program book. So I was figuring like 150,000 people would be getting this book. And, and instead they put it on their app and never published it. And they did the same thing with their schedule. And so it was just, still haven't been able to find it on the app. I have to email them and say, where the hell is it? But that's really a shame. That's really a shame. So let's see what else. What's your opinion on? Didn't see Final Fantasy. Knowing I saw, but I don't remember. It's a Nick Cage film. It was okay. London Has Fallen was okay, but kind of programmatic. And Love and Monsters, I don't think I saw. So there you go. But I can tell you some of my favorite movies. If you've never seen the 1951 Day the Earth Stood Still, that's a great film. And Things to Come by H.G. Wells, 1936 is great. Metropolis, of course, is iconic, 1925 or 27. So those are some of the great ones. Forbidden Planet is a great fun film from the 50s, 1955. Yeah, so, but yeah, and the cool part about, by the way, so it was very funny because after the panel, for several days after that, you saw people walking around wearing these because everything bends. You can actually, bend it to go around your neck or go around your face, or really fun. Now, I'll tell you an interesting thing about this design, because Ron Cobb, my friend Ron Cobb, was one of the great designers on Alien. And when Giger did the face hugger, let me get there, his design of the face hugger didn't have a lot of these anatomical details, and it didn't look like it would really work and do what it was supposed to do. So Ron Cobb actually went in and redesigned it, kept the basic shape of it, but gave it a lot of the musculature and the kind of crustacean aspect of it. So this was really a collaboration between H.R. Giger and Ron Cobb. So pretty cool, very, very cool, and a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful monster, which they're going to be utilizing a lot of in Alien Romulus. So hope you still got paid. I did. Yes, thank you for that. I did get paid for that Sterling article. But it's a shame because it's like when you write a script that doesn't get made, which fortunately hasn't happened to me very often. 95% of what I've written has gotten made. But it's sort of like you write to communicate with others, to share your work with others. So when it doesn't get out to the world, even if you got paid, the money's nice, but I could have been doing something else with my time. So Victor says, what's your opinion on Mass Effect 3? Didn't see it. Men in Black International, saw part of it. Didn't think it was that great. I don't like the Mission Impossible movies particularly. Monster Hunter, I don't remember. I think it was okay. I didn't see all of it. Moonfall, didn't see all of it. Or Moonfall, that's the one with the Earth hitting. Yeah, that's the Roland Emmerich one. It was sort of like grade C Roland Emmerich. I like Greenland a lot better as a something hitting the Earth movie. If you've never seen Greenland, I highly recommend it. Mr. Wood and Mr. Chin says, I have the first Alien film on DVD, Dark Star. The alien is a spotty beach ball with duck feet and a bad attitude. It's a fun student film. I think Dan is in it. Very funny. Yes, Dan is the lead in it, and he's a very, very good comedic actor. Very, very funny. At one point, the character says his real name is William Frug. That's an in-joke because at that time, Frug was a film professor, and he's naming his own teacher. And William Frug also was the producer on the final season of Twilight Zone. So that's pretty remarkable. So very, very fun. But actually, here's the story between Dark Star and Alien. What happened was, Dark Star was too short to be a feature film. So when it was acquired, they needed to pad it out by about 15 or 20 minutes. So they came up with that whole set piece of the alien that gets loose in the ship and Pinback, Sergeant Pinback, having to find it, having to capture it, and so they got some creature from the Black Lagoon hands and a beach ball, which they painted up orange and spotty, and it's a very funny sequence. And but then Dan O'Bannon got the thought of, well, what if you had an alien at loose in a spaceship, but it wasn't funny? It was really scary, and that was the seed of Aliens. So it's very interesting to see the connective tissue between different projects. Let's see. Mission Impossible sucks. Yeah, sort of, kind of. Love Dark Star. My mom mistakenly thought it was a horse movie and took me to see it when I was 11. Well, that's better than taking you to something like Alien when you're 11, because Dark Star doesn't have anything that's terribly mind warping. But yeah, but it's a great, fun film. Dark Star is still the best sci-fi film of all time. Don't know if I would agree with that, but it's certainly a very, very good one, and very certain films have a ripple effect in the films that they then influence, or the films that come after them. And Dark Star is very much one of those, because the ship was in Dark Star was designed by Ron Cobb, the great Ron Cobb, and that led directly to him participating in Alien and Total Recall and all the great films he did. Aliens as a designer. It led to Dan O'Bannon creating Alien and then going on to Total Recall and all the wonderful films he did. It led to John Carpenter's directing career, where he got to do, Big Trouble in Little China and The Thing and so many other films. And it also was, and the spaceship was made by my friend Greg Jean, who went on to build the city in Blade Runner and the mothership in Close Encounter and so forth. So it really had a ripple effect of incredibly talented people. Um, let's see. Greenland or Deep Impact are far better than Moonfall, and I generally like Roland Emmerich. I find, like, just like the director of Fifth Element, I find them very hit and miss. Like, when they're on, when they do a good one, it's great. Fifth Element is one of my favorite films, and I love Independence Day despite some of the criticisms one can make of it. But then they can also really, really make something that's very not great. So now Mortal Kombat. I haven't seen the Mortal Kombat movies, and I saw Next, but again, I don't remember. I think it was good. I like Nicolas Cage in general. People often dismiss him because they think of that sort of Nicolas Cage character, right? The out of control character. But in reality, he's an extremely varied and nuanced actor. He's actually really terrific. If you look at a wide range of his films, he's been spectacular in so many films. He's really, really one of the greats. So let's see. Uh, Yes. Big Trouble is such a great film. Yes, it is. It is. And it's very funny because Kurt Russell is sort of doing John Wayne, but doing John Wayne as a klutz, because in reality, it's all the other people who actually, make stuff happen and succeed in that film. It's a great film, and James Hong is terrific in it. I've met at Comic-Con. I actually met the actor who played Lightning in it. He's a stunt guy, and he wants to be in Space Command, so I'm sure I'll be casting him sooner rather than later. Yeah, they've announced that Robert Picardo is going to be playing the holographic Doctor in Starfleet Academy. So that's good. I have to talk to Bob and see if he's still going to do Space Command. I certainly hope so. Doug Jones is going to be in Great Solar War. And again, please pledge to our Kickstarter campaign, Space Command Great Solar War. We need to get to the finish line, guys. Any little bit of money can help enormously. Spread the word. Do whatever you can. It's really appreciated. I mean, the Star Trek. It's very difficult for me to watch the new Star Trek shows. I know the animated one is good. I've only watched very little of it. I keep hoping that Strange New World would become more consistent. I find it so hit and miss. And there's just such a glut of all this stuff now between the Star Wars shows and the Star Trek shows. It's you can't watch all of it. It's impossible. And so I wish there were a little more artistry and a little less content. But I guess that goes against the times. So let's see. And let's see. Animorphs again. But since the book is so hard to adapt in live action, did they ever consider animation for the TV show? And said no, no. I mean, they may ultimately do that if they want to return to that material. It would be a much better idea. But when they flew me to New York, I met with Deborah Forte, who was the head of Scholastic at the time, and they were going to do a live action show, and they were going to shoot it in Canada. So I wasn't involved in any of the production decisions, nor did I want to be, because I knew it was going to be just a nightmare in terms of production logistics with all the animals and all that stuff, man. But I did the job they asked me to do, which was to set the tone of the show, to provide all the outlines, and to write a bunch of scripts, which I did, and it was fun. I really enjoyed it. So let's see. Yeah, Nicolas Cage. You know, I've never seen Kiss of the Vampire. I'll have to watch that. Uh, are they going to make a live action Penguin movies? Well, they're doing the Penguin series, and boy, Colin, what's his name? Is phenomenal and transformative. You can't recognize him in any way. It looks like it's really going to be strong. That's a fantastic con poster. And yes, it was his real chest. It's a painting actually, and it's quite wonderful. I saw it at the Star Trek convention last year and just fell in love with it. So I'm glad I put up the dough and got it. It's a wonderful piece of work. And again, Ricardo Montalban is so good in that movie, and the look of Ricardo Montalban is so great in that movie. Because at the same time, he was doing Fantasy Island and playing this urbane character, and he, at first, when he was starting kind of to play with the role of Khan, he was doing much more his standard thing, and he started to realize that it wasn't going to work, that he would have to actually create a completely different character, and that's what he did. And Nicholas Meyer's direction, of course, is wonderful. Wrath of Khan is one of my favorite movies. Let's see. I'm sure it was a challenge to write for Animorphs, knowing the limitations of the show. The episodes you wrote are definitely the better ones. Thank you. Uh, I mean, the more, I started in animation, and I was the god of animation for a number of years, but that wasn't where my heart lay. I was I was always bringing my A game. I was always writing content that entertained me and thus entertained the audience. But I really didn't understand production logistics until I started writing for live action. Then I got to where I really understood what things cost and how to squeeze a dollar and get the most for your buck and all the stuff that I've utilized on Space Command. And that was one of the things that made it so hard when I was developing Captain Power for television, because I kept asking John Copeland and the others on the show, what can we afford to do? What are the logistics? How many characters? How many sets? How many action scenes, etc.? And they didn't know, because it was their first live action show as well, Gary Goddard, and so that made it very difficult. So the pilot script that I wrote for Captain Power, I don't think it ever got made. Some of the other episodes I wrote for Captain Power did, and of course I wrote a Bible for the series that set who the characters were, what the world was, a lot of the details of the show, and then I basically vouchsafed Joe Straczynski to story edit. They wanted me to story edit it, and I was writing features at the time, so I said, hire this guy you've never heard of. He's just worked in animation, but if he can't do the job, I'll step in. And that was Joe Straczynski, and the two producers that he did Captain Power with were the producers he ended up doing Babylon 5 with and developing the show. So it's fascinating how, if not for Captain Power, there probably would have never been a Babylon 5. I think Joe would have been successful in his career, Joe Straczynski, J. Michael Straczynski, but I don't think Babylon 5 would have ever come to exist, because it took so many just serendipitous things to happen. The fact that because on Captain Power we did the first CG characters, in addition to live action, and CG, map paintings and so forth, and that really led the way for them to do the CG on Babylon 5 the way they did. So it was really remarkable, the evolution of science fiction on TV. On writing, do you create the show Bible first, then create the characters? It depends on what the project is. There were actually freelance shows that I pitched to where there was no Bible on the show, and I wrote one just so I would know who the characters were and what the stories were and what the show was. And sometimes I would go into pitch and I would say, look, you don't have a series Bible, here is one, that you can give to the other writers, the other freelancers, because a series Bible is important so that the writers on the show know what the show is, but also so anyone coming in to write for the show knows what it is. You don't really have freelance uh, slots the way you used to in live action. There are far fewer episodes per season. It's a very different beast now than it once was. But if I'm the sole writer, like on Space Command, I don't write a series Bible in general. I mean, we've written various documents over time on Space Command that have changed, but mainly they were so everyone on the team would know what the story was, what the characters were, what the look was. But It varies. On Dante's Station, we have a series Bible. On Magic Time, we have the series pilot. On Sweet Haven, we have a series Bible that's a fairly short document, but then we've written the entire full first hour pilot. So case to case, case by case. So now Victor's asking if we should make various sequels to Battleship Independence Day, yeah, Super 9, War of the Worlds 2. There actually have been a number of sequels to War of the Worlds, one way or another, under different titles. The first one probably was Edison's Conquest of Mars, which was pretty much a sequel to War of the Worlds, not written by H.G. Wells. But the problem with sequels is usually they're bad. Usually they don't work, and every now and then you get a good one, like Aliens. But my God, we saw Independence Day 2. It was terrible, and just threw the characters away. That was the worst part of it. And so again, it's for me, it's never should they make a sequel. It's who's making the sequel or who's making the original. You know, you really have to. I mean, the thing I liked about Blade Runner 2049, it's not my favorite movie. It's a movie I like quite a bit, but Blade Runner 2049, they at least weren't just doing the first story over again, and that's a problem with a lot of the Star Wars films. It's a problem with a lot of sequels. They just kind of do the same film again with some of the details changed, and that's diminishing returns usually. Geek Truth 64 says, I'm a huge Star Trek fan, but I don't like current Star Trek. However, what Terry did with Picard Season 3 was surprisingly good. Wish they would do the Legacy show, not this Academy show. Yeah, well, that's Alex Kurtzman said if he could greenlight Legacy, he would, but he's not the boss. So um, we'll see. I mean, David Ellison, who's Skydance is taking over Paramount, I guess, if that's still going through. And he's a big science fiction fan. He's made some good science fiction movies. So maybe he'll get it all on track. I hope so. The thing about Star Trek, the current iterations of Star Trek, I thought JJ did a good job with the 2009 reboot, the feature. I wasn't that big a fan of the sequels on that either. But the problem with the Star Trek TV shows now is they're gorgeous. The visual effects are gorgeous. The sets are gorgeous. The actors, in many cases, are very talented. The costumes are great, and it's the storylines. It's the storylines that often just drop you out of the whole thing. It's like God. It's like I mean, I could give a master class on what they do wrong in terms of characters that don't pay off, storylines that don't pay off. Characters who are sort of the same as another character, and why do we have both of these characters in the thing? On and on. It's interesting. I was thinking about wokeness today, and I'm a liberal, and I hate that the right uses wokeness to brand, to attack the left. And again, if any of you are conservatives, It's not a personal slam against you, but here's my thought about that whole buzzword. Okay, um, in my opinion, if woke were going to have a good definition, or if we were going to say what liberalism is about, or at least what I stand for, let's say, I just think that everyone should have a fair shake, an equal shot. Okay, so in other words, you get up, like if you look like me, generally, you get up and you look in the mirror in the morning and you go through your day, and people don't screw with you. If a cop pulls you over, the likelihood is you're not going to get shot. And people don't mess with you. Okay, but so I think that should be true of pretty much everybody, that they can live their life, and if they don't hurt other people, if they're not pedophiles or something, then they should be able to have their life the way they, if the main thing is that they should be compassionate and they should be loving, and people should love them, and they should have lives of meaning. And for me, a life of meaning starts with other people caring about you and you caring about other people. So that's, for me, that's the whole thing. So when they talk about diversity in casting, I think if it's bad actors or bad characters in bad stories, then that's awful, and I don't think you should have that. you know but on the other hand, I would never ever ever think of limiting my casting choices simply based on someone's race or anything. So in Space Command, we had Nichelle Nichols, which was a great gift for us. We have Christina Moses, who's mixed race. We have Francois Chow from The Expanse, who's Asian, and plenty of white people. Plus, if you like seeing white people on your TV screen, there's plenty of white people. But what they are playing are characters who connect with each other. Characters who who are there for each other, the characters who have a sense of honor and ethics. That's what's important to me. And and what we're trying to do, for instance, we're working on Great Solar War, and the challenge with that script is there's a lot of characters, and we have to pay them off, and we have to make sure they connect well, and that we give them things to do that aren't just kind of filling space. And we have to have it be meaningful and adult. One of the problems I have with a lot of the Star Trek series is they feel like they're being written by very young people who don't really have a lot of life experience. Now that may not be true. It may not be true at all, but they just feel shallow and um, referential of other TV shows and other movies, and not, it's very. I haven't seen. I don't think on any of the Star Trek shows, the recent batch so far. I don't think I've seen anything that I would say was profound. And certainly on Twilight Zone, and certainly on the original Star Trek, and certainly on Outer Limits, and certainly on movies like Alien and Blade Runner, you're seeing something that's trying to get to the heart of some deep truth. And I'd love to see more of that in science fiction television. So let's see. Um, and again, I'm sorry if I got into a political, screed. That's not at all what I want to do. What I was just basically, if I'm an advocate for anything, I'm an advocate for compassion put into action, because I know that love and compassion have ripple effects that really banish darkness and hatred and fear. So there you go. Uh, let's see. Any movement on your sequel to Twilight's on the Untold Stories? Yeah, after Twilight. I'm in conversation with the Serling agent and the Serling daughters, but also I'm talking to them about an action film, a fantasy action film, sort of in the genre of Ghostbusters, with Rod Serling as the main character, right after Twilight Zone is canceled. And the actor that I'd love to play Rod Serling is Sam Rockwell. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. We're in the talking phase right now, and I've got a big movie producer attached to it right now. So we'll see what happens. I'll let you know as soon as I can announce anything. The Trek shows have never looked better, but the writing and characters aren't there. That's the most important part, particularly with Trek. Uh, Liberalism and woke have parted ways, meaning rise. Yes, woke now means over entitled niche groups. Well, yeah, and quite frankly, I'd love for that word to just kind of go away, because my friends who are liberals don't ever use it. They don't refer to themselves as woke. They don't refer to anything as woke, and neither do I. And so I think branding people with like a word saying, and this is true as well as talking about people as racists or as monsters or as fascists or as anything. Look at their actions. I mean, it's a great litmus test of, are they hurting anyone? Are their words causing harm? And that's, if the answer is yes, and I mean physical harm. I mean, are people afraid? Are people put in fear? Are they feeling like they might be in danger of physical violence? Those are the big ones. And I think we can all agree, unless we're sociopaths, that that we want our children to be safe. We want our families to be safe. We want everyone to be have access to medical care and have access to clean water and healthy food, and all those things, and be able to sleep easy. So that's my wish for the world. Let's see. Bruce says, I didn't like the singing episode like everyone else, but it is funny. I'll have to watch it. The thing that bugs me is they keep throwing away Pike as an effective and authoritative captain, right? So, like, in the original pilot, the Roddenberry pilot, he's very definitely a heroic character. And in most of the Star Trek series prior to this, the captains are at least decisive. But they keep having him, like, they keep leaning into the comedy side, and he's running for the hills, and he's like losing, and it's a waste of a really good actor, I think. So, beautiful perspective, Mark. Thank you, Bruce. That's nice. Same here. Woke needs to go. Yeah, exactly. But and one thing I would encourage everyone to do is to talk to people who are different from you. And because what you'll find, I mean, I'm including conservatives in that. I mean, Elaine and I once drove 12,000 miles around the U.S., just wherever the wind blew us, just back roads and talking to people and meeting people. And you find very often that someone's political beliefs are not the same as their personal beliefs. In other words, a lot of people who might have very conservative beliefs will be very good neighbors, very kind people, will help others who are in trouble, will go out of their way to be kind. And again, I don't know why there's a disconnect between their political beliefs and their personal beliefs, but I think the good part of it is that on a human level, on an individual level, they're kind and they're not judgmental, and or at least not overtly judgmental. So, for instance, they're not not everyone's in the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, no, not everyone's a crazy white nationalist. Not everyone's gonna create abominations, atrocity. I recently said to someone that the solution to atrocity is not more atrocity. The solution to atrocity, the answer to atrocity, is justice. And I'm very, very, and just as I'll say one political aside, okay, give me one. I'm very glad that Kamala Harris spoke out against what's happening in Gaza. I feel, as a Jew, I feel very strongly that it's the worst example of a war crime in my lifetime. And I mean, you can say that there are more dead people in the Rwandan genocide, but in terms of a supposedly civilized quote unquote quote country, I think what Israel's doing in Gaza is absolutely unexcusable in every way, shape, and form. Killing children, starving people as a weapon of war, all of those things. It's what happened on October 7th in Israel was equally unexcusable, but it's the same beast of violence and hatred and war. And war has to become unacceptable as a concept. It's that simple. The one of the things in Day the Earth Stood Still was that we essentially have to agree to let robots rule us so that we won't destroy ourselves and destroy other planets. And that was the notion, and it's a very hard thing to accept. But I sure wish that there was some power over our worst nature, and I don't know what that would be. I don't want robots ruling me, God knows, but I wish that there were a United Nations that had more ability to enforce justice. And again, it's dangerous because as long as we're human, we're going to make mistakes, and that's everyone at every level. And I think AI is incredibly dangerous, frankly, because if I wasn't a great ape of this species, I would not particularly like great apes because they're so wacky and behave so badly. But so if I was an AI that had free will, I don't think I'd necessarily have a great affection for humanity. So I think, we'll see what happens. Let's see. Just treat everyone like a person, particularly when they disagree with you. Yes, you both might learn something from the other. Yes, I agree 100%. See, I don't need to engage. That's the lovely thing about my life. I don't need to get into arguments. I don't need if someone says something snarky or mean or cruel. All I have to do is say that's your opinion. Like if you don't like Space Command, you don't have to watch it. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to rent it. You don't have to contribute to our Kickstarter campaigns. You don't have to watch Mr. Sci-Fi. It's like we live in this enormous candy store that's saying, what candy do you want? And all you have to do is pick, and, I'm very lucky. I'm very blessed in many, many ways, particularly having Elaine is the big blessing of my life, of course. But also, I'm blessed because the wacky stuff that I loved when I was a kid, which was very niche, became the dominant genre. And now you've got these huge movies and huge TV shows and best-selling books, and that didn't necessarily have to happen. I was very lucky. And so as a result, I got to be in a career that paid me millions of dollars. I got to be in an art form that was seen by millions of people. There's so many science fiction writers that most of you probably have never even heard of. Some writers who are quite wonderful, but they're forgotten or very soon to be forgotten. So, I'm a happy camper. So let's see. I've been talking too much. Let's see. Love the original. Your thoughts on the remake with Keanu Reeves? Oh, James Hong has a great monologue in that movie. That's the best thing in that movie. I thought that remake. I really love Keanu Reeves. I think he's got a wonderful spirit. I think he really pushes himself hard. The first John Wick movie I thought was great. I've gotten a little tired of them, quite frankly. The Matrix wasn't really my favorite movie, but I think it's a very good movie. But that Day the Earth Stood Still remake, I was just, you know, uh, you know, go with God. It's like I don't, you know, lots of mistakes in my opinion. Now, on the other hand, if you saw it and loved it, that's fine. But watch the original sometime, the one with Patricia Neal and Billy Gray and so forth. It's just terrific, just terrific. Um, let's see. Love Space Command. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Please contribute to our Kickstarter campaign, Space Command Great Solar War. It won't take a lot to get to 50,000. We're at 24,000 now. And if people just put in a few hundred here, a few hundred there, we'll get there. But we only have 7 days. Spread the word, tell your friends, do what you can. Even if you put in $15, 25 bucks, or if you buy the. Now I mentioned earlier that the Twilight. There's a Rod Serling limited collector's shirt that we're putting out on the Kickstarter campaign that I drew when I was 16 years old, even before I worked on the Twilight Zone companions. So it's pretty cool, and it celebrates Rod's 100th birthday this year. So go there and get it. It's only $30. My gosh, what a steal. Let's see. Mazo, I'm late. No, so hard to line up UK US time. Yes, but this will be archived in the live stream, section of Mr. Sci-Fi, so you can watch it all there. I'm going to be at the Star Trek convention in Las Vegas. Our Kickstarter campaign has 7 days to go. We're shooting Space Command Great Solar War. We're in post-production on Space Command Forgiveness. It's all coming together really, really well. I just went to Comic-Con. Our panel from Comic-Con had some of our artists on the panel, Ian McCaig and Tehani Farr. So it was really fun, and we showed some clips that were rarities. So definitely check that out. Geek Truth says, I heard Strange New Worlds referred to as a Las Vegas show interpretation of Trek, and I thought that was pretty accurate, unfortunately. Yeah, I don't speak much about Strange New Worlds or Lower Decks or any of the recent Star Trek series, because I haven't seen all the episodes. It's like I watched the first 2 seasons of Discovery, and it was like I got to a point where I couldn't stand it. I would try to watch the third season, and after like 2 or 3 minutes, I would just turn off the TV. I couldn't stand it because I would see it just wasn't ringing the bell for me that good science fiction rings, let's say. And when I watch Strange New Worlds, I just can't. I mean, what really goes through my mind, quite honestly, is I wish they'd let me play in that playpen, in that sandbox, because I think I could really help those shows in a lot of ways. Because the great thing about Star Trek, the original, was that it invited you to do a story that had a profound meaning and that you'd never seen before, with characters that all worked. I mean, all of those characters work. Kirk, Spock, McCoy. I mean, you can say that Scotty's accent is terrible, but James Doohan was very good in the role as someone with a heart, and and then I watch these new Star Trek shows, and I just get so tired of it. I get so tired of it. Either it's cliche, or it's stupid, or it's a waste of really talented actors, or on and on and on and on. And you can just see them kind of moving the pieces around. It's like, oh, well, we've never had a starship use a tractor beam to grab an asteroid and hit another ship with it. That's cool. Well, okay, so you can do it, fine. But why does it make what does that have to do with story that makes it worth doing? What makes it like cool conceptually? Intellectually, emotionally, So anyway, I don't mean to make a speech, but Strange New Worlds is the best of the batch, other than Lower Decks, I guess. Lower Decks, from everything I've heard, is really, really good. But Comic-Con, yes, I haven't talked much about Comic-Con. Comic-Con, I enjoyed it, but mainly I went to it. We did a Space Command panel, which is here on Mr. Sci-Fi. You can check it out. Unlike panels that they put on the internet in general that don't show the clips that were shown, we actually include the clips, so you can see the clips that we showed only at Comic-Con. We did a signing, which was very fun. We gave out copies of the comic book because Tehani was signing, and so she, of course, is the artist on the comic book. We gave out posters, and I met a lot of people there that I'm going to be working with, artists and other sorts of people, very talented artists who stood for what I stand for. Dave Dorman is a Star Trek artist who designed the Paladin before Tobias Richter then did the detailed version in CG. And we have the flying wing that Dave Dorman designed, where the Paladin the fuselage drops into a flying wing configuration, which then locks onto it. And in Great Solar War, that's going to be the new iteration of the Paladin. So Dave Dorman has designed that. We're going to be using his design, and I'm going to be hiring him to do a cover for the graphic novel of United Planets. So he's a very, very good artist, very nice guy. And let's see, I'm getting behind again. Let's see. It says, I am the same about all new Star Trek right now, except Prodigy. They did a really interesting anti-nostalgia episode, and I wish my academic brain worked well enough to write an article on it. They want to know something about Scots in Star Trek. All the Scots I know do not like recasting of Scotty, especially if his accent is more accurate. I agree. I agree, because when James Doohan went to do Star Trek to audition for it, he was a Canadian actor, and they said so he spoke it with a Canadian accent, which is very similar to an American accent. And they said, "Well, can you do other accents?" So he did Australian, and he did British, and then he did Scots, and that's the one they chose. And so it wasn't, and if you look at old movies and in old radio shows, British actors don't know how to do American accents. American actors don't know how to do good British accents or Australian accents. Just watch it. One of my favorite movies is on the beach. It's an anti-World War III movie, and boy, they don't do accents very well in that movie, I'll tell you. But it's still a great movie. Um, but yeah, I haven't really liked. Sometimes, like with JJ's Star Trek, I sort of kind of feel like it's people dressing up and pretending to be those characters. It's like when we did Star Trek New Voyages, you had to sort of go with it that James Cawley was Kirk or whoever was Spock, or etc. And you went with it because, in my case, in the case of the episode I did with George Takei, I think because the writing that Michael Reeves and I did was terrific. I'm very proud of that episode, and but you had to like have you kind of had to look through a special lens to get it. But okay, so let's see. Seen all the episodes of Strange New Worlds. It feels like a perversion of the Orville. Yes, the Orville's a good show, and it got better as it went on. Um, yes, the Orville was basically his take on '90s Next Gen, and then with the third season, when they saw what was going on with the Star Trek series, they just poured in a ton more money, which is when they called me and asked me if I wanted the Orville sets, and I said yes, but then they decided they didn't want to give them to a for-profit organization operation, so that's a shame because it would have been fun to have them. Let's see, and the Orville, I've done commentaries on the Orville, and I think the fun part about the Orville is that it's really, I mean, one could have a plagiarism suit against the Orville. It really is Star Trek: The Next Generation, but the one legal out you have where you can rip something off is if it's a satire. The courts have been very clear about this. If you satirize something, you're in the clear. So I think his idea was that really what he wanted to do was Star Trek: The Next Generation, but by making it an overt comedy when it started, uh, they were able to you know get out of jail free card, and then they started moving it more and more and more to serious content, which I very much liked because I didn't need to have dogs licking their balls or whatever that was. You know, so when they moved away from that, I liked it a lot better. I still haven't seen all of them though. But yes, I agree. Farewell to the Master was the original Day There Stood Still idea. Yes, exactly, and you can track it down and find it. Thoughts on the remake of my all-time favorite episode, TZ Monsters on Maple Street? I didn't see the remake. Again, with the most recent iterations of Twilight Zone, I just didn't watch them all because I don't need to. I wrote the Twilight Zone Companion not to write a lot of books about different TV shows. I wrote the Twilight Zone Companion to learn how to make great TV, which I then, I believe I have actually. No false modesty. I'm not, up there with Ray Bradbury or Charles Dickens or Mark Twain, but I've had my share of good scripts, and so that's why I did it. I loved the Twilight Zone. I love Star Trek. I love the original Outer Limits, many other things. But so when there'd be a new Twilight Zone, I'd check it out, but I wouldn't watch every episode. Once I decided that it wasn't good, or at least to my liking, I would just kind of bow out. Let's see. The remake of Twilight Zone in the 2000s, it was changed to terrorists. Oh, brother. Yeah, I mean, the problem is that when something's pretty much perfect, why screw with it? I mean, Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, the original one, is just brilliant, just brilliant. And the great part of it is that it's about mob hysteria, and it can relate to so many different subjects. that where people are afraid. It's a great piece of work. It's a classic. It's superb. Also important to remember the actors didn't always have dialogue coaches back when. Yes, Dick Van Dyke was lambasted for it, but no one told him that it was a bad accent, so he just didn't know. Yes, and actually Brits have a lot of affection for Dick Van Dyke's Mary Poppins chimney sweep, but it is I think it really does qualify as the worst accent ever done by anyone. but but Dick Van Dyke is so lovable and so wonderful. I mean, he's one of a kind and he's great. And God bless him. I'm so glad that he's still with us. He's one of a kind, and I'm not, never going to say anything bad about Dick Van Dyke. Let's see. Would it be okay if I share the section of this video talking about Animorphs, Mark? Sure. Yeah, of course. Yes, please. All of you can spread anything I say anywhere. Okay. The one thing I would ask is that you include a link to Mr. Sci-Fi so that they can subscribe and be part of what we're doing. Because the more backers I get, the better. Though, and please spread the word about the Kickstarter campaign, because if we don't get to 50 grand, we lose all that money. I mean, I really don't want to lose $24,000, because that'll get us, 2 or 3 days of shooting Space Command. So, and 50 grand will get us a week. So, it's super important. Please do whatever you can. If you have a rich uncle who's a Star Trek freak, please let him know. And as I said before, if you can only afford $5, pledge $5. If you can afford 5,000, pledge that. If you can afford, 30 grand, great. I mean, I know they limit it to 10, but if you and your pals each put in 10, that works too. I mean, it is, Kickstarter is always very high stress for me, but it's worth it because it primes the pump. It primes the pump. And, on the Showrunners Network, we're now selling shares for $150,000 per share. We're selling 200 of them. We have 2 investors so far. That's for like people who have serious money. But, but again, that doesn't diminish or lessen Kickstarter, because all of it goes toward realizing this wonderful dream that I'm living. And money, what money does, money makes it all go. And the more money I have, the faster it goes. That's all. So, let's see. The Orville, Star Trek needs to be about a new idea, not soap opera. Absolutely, I agree 100%. I mean, you have no idea how powerful it was to see City on the Edge of Forever with no warning of what the story was going to be, and it blew the top of my head off. I was like a little kid. I was like 10 years old, and Kirk doesn't save the girl. He literally throws her under a truck. I mean, quite frankly, and it's amazing. It was amazing because it said in life you're going to come to a point where you have to do the right thing, but it's going to break your heart. And I think that's a profound truth. And Harlan and the others who worked on that show had the courage to tell that truth. So, yes, absolutely. And that's why I love Star Trek, because it had that courage. Let's see. For some reason, Twilight Zone is not as effective for me if it's in color. I agree. It's, well, partially because it's the greatest black and white photography ever done in television. And the only runner-up, I would say, would be Outer Limits, which is a totally different style of black and white, but incredibly beautiful as well. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, the trick is that for anything to be good in film or TV, it's lightning in a bottle. It's the right people coming together to make something amazing. And you can try to do that, but it's very, very hard to do, which is why you almost always have a visionary at the top in science fiction, whether it's Serling or Roddenberry or whomever, Chris Carter. You need that person at the top who's really got the vision and also has something they need to say, something about the real world they need to say. And I've said before that it's people who went through World War II that really had lived a life and had something to say, and that was Serling and that was Roddenberry, and that's why that whole generation of writers, it was deeper, because they were commenting on life, not on other movies and TV shows. So that's that. Twilight Zone episodes are so timeless compared to most of what we get now, which is dated after a year or two, or forgettable instantly. I agree. Can you briefly talk about your daily writing process? Thank you. Yes, in my perfect world, I'd be writing every single day for several hours. Many of my friends do that. Guillermo del Toro has that as a working process. Ray Bradbury certainly did. But because I'm running a studio, I don't get to write as much as I want. Every day we're working on Space Command. But we're writing it Elaine and I are writing the script now, and but I'm also working with visual effects teams and getting ready with designing sets and costumes and so I'm and raising money, so it's a mixed bag of everything. uh but I'm still, when I sit down to write, I really love what, the surprises that come to me, the things that you don't see coming. And I love my actors and I love the characters. One thing I'll put out soon is when I write, I have a little photo of each actor in front of me so that I can look at them and hear their voice in my head. And so I've done a sheet that shows who's going to be in Space Command Great Solar War. And I'll share it with you guys very soon. And it's very fun. It's an incredible cast, really incredible. Let's see. I'm getting behind again. Let's see. I'll link your YouTube and Kickstarter. Hopefully, it helps you. Thank you. Um, Galaxy Quest is a great movie, as is Forbidden Planet. Watch both of them. Check them out. They're great. They're terrific. And I must tell you, when I interviewed Anne Francis, who starred in Forbidden Planet, it was decades later, but she was still so astonishingly beautiful, and her eyes were phenomenal. It was a great experience. Because I interviewed her for the work she did on Twilight Zone when I was in my early 20s. There's actually a photo of me with Anne Francis. I'm very glad to have that. Let's see. Uh, huh. Uh-huh. Yes, yes, yes. And yes. Yes. Well, let me hang on. Let me close the window. There's some sunlight hitting me. But and I'll go up and smoke. Hang on a sec. But yeah, it's these wonderful actors that we grew up with, actors and actresses, when they're gone, they're gone. Writers too. So it's really important that we treasure them and treat them with great respect and great reverence, because Ray Bradbury, when he was gone, he was gone. Harlan Ellison, all these wonderful writers. And so that's one of the reasons why I love going to science fiction conventions, because you can meet Nichelle Nichols, Walter Koenig, back, Nichelle when she was with us. But you can get photos with them or photos of them. And it's an enormous honor, and it's exciting, and I just love it. So let's see. Cinematography for Twilight Zone was gorgeous. Yes, 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 and it was terrific, superb. Let's see. I'm okay with space opera and episode of the week. I think there's room for both. I still think DS9 was the best Trek. Yeah, and I'm very proud of having come up with Far Beyond the Stars. It was a profound truth. That one really hit the note. It was why we write science fiction and why science fiction matters. I thought it was a great piece of work, and I'm very glad to have been part of it. Um, but of course, you had great actors and great producers and everyone up and down the line doing their incredibly best job. So it was really terrific. Somewhere I've got that copy of Galaxy that they faked up for that episode with the matte painting from the original Star Trek as the cover illustration. I'll have to someday. I'll find that in a crate somewhere, and it'll be absolutely, fun to share it with you. Let's see. Uh, can they even do black and white photography like that today? Why was Twilight Zone black and white clearer? Well, they shot 35 millimeter, but more than that, George T. Clemens, the DP of Twilight Zone, who won an Emmy for it, he started in silent films as a camera operator. He filmed Chaplin and Buster Keaton and Valentino and all those guys. He was the cameraman on Reuben Mamillion, Jekyll and Hyde with Frederick March. I mean, he really, really, really knew his stuff, and so the photography was just stunning, gorgeous, wonderful. So could you get that today? Maybe, but uh, I don't see anyone doing it. Let's see. Much of today I don't want to rewatch. No, it's true, because it's easily dispensed with. Um, Considering how dark all the shows are on TV now, I don't think so. Uh, it's like, yeah, shows are dark, shows are negative. I don't particularly like that, I must say. And also, but here's the thing. You know, one of the things I'm very glad of, from speaking for myself, yeah, and we'll go to about maybe 6:20, 6:30, guys. Because some of you came late to the table. But my degree is in painting, sculpture, and graphic arts from UCLA. I was a painter and a sculptor and so forth, and a photographer before I was a professional writer. And I had gallery shows when I was a teenager of my work. And my work appeared in magazines and so forth. And so that's why you can now buy a T-shirt with my drawing of Rod Serling that I did when I was 16. Go to the Kickstarter campaign, Space Command Great Solar War. For $30, you can have my Rod Serling T-shirt, which we are only offering now to celebrate Rod's 100th birthday. But the fact that I learned all those skills and that I was always fascinated with visual design helps me enormously on Space Command, because I can literally say, okay, let's combine that with that. Let's grab this piece and do this thing to it and make it different. And that's enormously gratifying. I love working with visual artists. It's so much fun. So let me see some of the comments. Let's see. Gates McFadden couldn't even see Patrick when filming Picard. Where are the gaffers? Yeah. Gates McFadden, we've been talking to her about being in Sweet Haven, and in fact, we did a video table read during the pandemic of that show. So we'll have more to talk about soon, very soon. Love my Far Beyond the Stars. Me too. Yeah, I met Avery Brooks during the shooting of that. It was really fun, really really fun. Got to get ready for bed. Have a great night. Thanks again for your work. I hope you're not based in Los Angeles, because then you're going to bed at 6:11. But to each his own. But have a good night, Clarence, and thanks for joining us. Hands down, probably one of the best Trek episodes of all time. Yes, I agree. We knew that Far Beyond the Stars was going to be one of the great episodes even before we wrote it. When I was sitting around the table with the writing staff and the producers of DS9, and we were just batting the story around, we all knew it was going to be one of the great ones. We just knew because of what it was, because of the whole nature of it. Let's see. Let's see. Blah 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 blah. Reading the comments. Yeah. Yeah. Well, see, that's where Star Trek is so great. When you're saying Far Beyond the Stars is one of the greatest episodes of television ever. Yes, Star Trek. You see, the problem with most shows is they're not designed for greatness. They're not designed to have profound truths or to do profoundly original stories. And so if you go into pitch to most shows, or if you're writing for most shows, you're not even presented with that opportunity. For instance, when I was a story editor on Friday the 13th series, I wanted to do a story about my extremely troubled relationship with my father. And it took, I think, like 9 months. And I really loved working on Friday the 13th of the series. It was a great, fun show. But it took me 9 months to convince my boss, Bill Taub, to let me do that episode, to let me do a deeply personal, meaningful story about a father and a son and the tragedy between them. And it was interesting because Bill finally said to me, because he had a very different relationship with his father. He said, I don't understand this story, and it's yeah, but I can see how much you want to tell it, so I'll let you write it. And I'm very grateful to him for that. That was a menschy move. That was a really cool thing to do. Hold on one sec. I have to get back to the image. Hold on, guys. There we go. Gotcha. My phone rang, and so I lost you on the screen for a second. Yeah, but Deep Space Nine, the Star Trek in general. I'm putting this on my lap to be closer. Star Trek in general allowed you that possibility. So I've always aimed for greatness in terms of my work. I want to create something that will last. Things last because they deserve to last. Often, Mark Twain is better than a lot of the guys who were writing when he was around. Dickens is better than a lot of the writers writing when he was around. There's a reason they last. But let's see. Picard season 3. Uh, again, yes, I'm not nostalgic for Star Trek: The Next Generation because I didn't grow up watching it. I was writing it. Whereas I'm very nostalgic for the original Star Trek and Twilight Zone and Outer Limits. So, for instance, when we get to work with Nichelle Nichols or someone of that ilk, or George Takei, it's a thrill for me. So let's see, and with leagues better. Yeah. I agree. So yes, I understand that some people are talking about Picard. Okay, yes. Then it's fine, Clarence. I was joking. I knew you were on the East Coast. The old Star Trek was about topical ideas in disguise at a time of great social change. Okay, huh? Maybe not the Gorn one. The Gorn one's great. The Gorn is great. I love the Gorn. I'm, you but yes. But see, that's the point of it. They don't all have to be brilliant, but they have to be occasionally brilliant. I mean, Troubles Tribbles is a great comedy, and Kirk isn't stupid. He's snarky. He's sarcastic, which is why it's fun, you know. But it doesn't violate who the characters are, and that's why it's great. But Star Trek was a greatly entertaining show, as was Twilight Zone, as was Outer Limits. I mean, the first obligation is to entertain, but you want to have a range that allows you to have depth. And for instance, Better Call Saul, I think, is one of the greatest shows ever, and the ending was absolutely perfect. And you know, and so that show is not science fiction, but they were able to get to profundity, and they were the artistry on that show is astonishing, amazing, wonderful. Um, let's see what else. Yeah, and Mazzo, I know it's late for you too. As per the previous chat, I flicked you an email re the New Zealand interpretation of Bradbury's The Sound of Thunder. Yeah, I have to find it. Did you send me a link to that? I'd love to see it. Um, uh, it's a shame I had to work so hard to do something meaningful on Friday the 13th. No, it really wasn't because for one thing, if I told them at the time that if the show had been just like the movies, I wouldn't have done it because I wasn't just going to do something about sadistic killing, but it was about people trying to make the world better. It was very similar to Twilight Zone in that way. It had a moral compass, but so very much enjoyed writing for it. But anytime you start on a show, particularly the first season of a show, it's like clay that you're molding, and you're trying to find the way to mold it into something meaningful. And so, you know, so that was fine. I'm just very glad I got to do that episode. It was called Pipe Dream, and it starred Michael Constantine, and I'm proud of that episode. Let's see. The previous? Yeah, yes. Uh, Sounds interesting. It was. Speaking of nostalgia for the original Star Trek, did you like Trials and Tribulations? Yes, I did. I thought it was a lot of fun and clever and technologically adroit. Um, let's see. That is in part why Trek from 60s to 2000s worked. Episodic storytelling means if one episode didn't work, there was a new story up next. Serialized stories lock you into a backstory for 10 episodes. Absolutely right, yes. Additionally, by the way, there were incredibly talented people working on the Star Trek series of the late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, Ron Moore has gone on with Battlestar Galactica and For All Mankind to create a great body of work, wonderful work. And Ira Bear was a great showrunner, and Michael Piller was a great mentor to young writers, bringing them up to showrunner level. So it was a very, very, very talented group, and they'd all grown up with Star Trek. They all loved Star Trek, and they were thrilled to be writing for that show, and as was I. And the actors were very, very, very talented. I mean, my gosh, uh, it was just such a gift to us as writers. Um, let's see. Uh, Bradbury Show link sent. Thank you. Did you send it to my email, markzickery@gmail.com? That's the best place to send it. Uh, I have seen Forgotten Silver, but it was a long time ago. Uh, Longer seasons and time to have conversations and take time to get to know characters and change and grow or let things unfold honestly. Yeah, but you can do it also in 8 episodes or 10 or 12. It doesn't have to be 22 or 26 or God knows 30, 39 like in the old days. You know, it's interesting because now these what are called anthologies now, which is stories that tell one story in a season. They're really structurally much like novels. For instance, when I do Magic Time, the first season probably will be the first novel, and the second season will probably be the second novel, and so on. It's um, it's all storytelling, and it's really the question is, are you telling a good story? I've found so many series that let me down. I mean, it's just they often let you down in the last few hours where it's like they don't know how to end it. Let's see. I left For All Mankind, got Apple just to watch it, and found it on your recommendation. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a great show. I don't agree with every choice they've made, but I'm very glad they've done it. Battlestar Galactica was a great show. For All Mankind is stiff and unappealing to me, unfortunately. Well, again, we all are different people and we like different things. And I think what makes it entertaining to me mainly is that I grew up during the race to the moon, and we were all expecting that Mars would be next, and then in the 80s we would land on Mars or whatever, and to not go to Mars, to be here 50 years later, and we haven't even gone back to the moon is just so disappointing. And so it's fun to see the alternative timeline for me. Let's see. Did you ever work with Brand and Braga? Yes, I have. Let's see, Brandon. He went to my gym, so I knew him. I'd see him every few days for many, many years. He introduced me to Neil deGrasse Tyson, which is how Neil deGrasse Tyson ended up being in Space Command. Um, I like Brandon. He's a nice guy. He's always friendly to me. We worked together, I think, when I was working on Star Trek: The Next Generation. He was very young then, of course. He was. I think Ron Moore is the stronger. I don't want to say anything that's going to be quoted because I like both of these men. But for me, Brannon it was much more about sort of Twilight Zone kinds of twists and changes, and Ron Moore was very much about sort of the meaning and the characters and all that. And I think they made a great writing team. First Contact is one of my favorite Star Trek movies, and I think they were great when they were writing together. And Brandon's done some very good work too. Cosmos with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and Orville. The work he did on Orville has been wonderful. So, I think he's, a director now more, and I think that's a very good niche for him, very much so. I think he's very good at it. Let's see, blah blah blah. Yeah, definitely check out For All Mankind. Um, Battlestar is better than For All Mankind. Some of the character choices and pacing aren't great, but it kept my interest for sure. But it's not for everybody. Again, the thing that was so great, Battlestar Galactica, really, Ron Moore's version, is the anti-Star Trek. Everything they weren't allowed to do on Star Trek, they did on Battlestar Galactica. So it was like the leader can be wrong, the characters can get drunk and have sex and be screwed up as people, but heroes anyway. All these things that Roddenberry wouldn't let them do. So very fun, very fun. Um, Not the biggest fan of Rick Berman myself. Did you have an opinion on him and his writing? Well, Michael Piller. One of the reasons he succeeded as a showrunner on Star Trek was that he saw Rick Berman as his boss. So he wasn't fighting Rick Berman. He wasn't going toe to toe with him. He didn't make it into, I was going to say a dick fight. Um, so Rick Berman, here's how it worked. I mean, if you want to know the history of this, Gene Roddenberry was a bit of a wild card, and when Star Trek: The Next Generation got greenlit as a series, Paramount wanted an executive to oversee him, an executive who had production experience. So Rick Berman was a Paramount executive. He was not a writer. He was not even a hands-on TV producer, as far as I know. And so they put him on the show, and then of course they eased Roddenberry out over time, and Berman and Piller were basically the ones in charge. I don't agree with a lot of some. I didn't really have a lot of time. I maybe met Berman once, but I never really was in the room with him when we were doing anything. It was always Michael Piller and the other writers on the show. Michael Piller was funny because after Star Trek: The Next Generation, I learned that Michael Piller was my second cousin. My grandmother's name was Agnes Piller, and so that was very funny because we then had lunch. Next Gen was still on the air at that point, or it may have been moved on to DS9 and Voyager. But Michael Piller and I had lunch at Paramount one time because I called him and I said, hey, we're related. We were both at our Uncle Adolph's funeral when I was 13, and that was a lot of fun. I liked Michael Piller very much as a person. He and I had different aesthetics. We didn't agree on story in certain ways, but I thought he was a terrific showrunner and terrific, and created a terrific body of work with Star Trek: The Next Generation. Let's see. Um, yes. Yeah, it's funny because I worked with him and we didn't know that, he and I, but we were always respectful to each other. It's very funny because when I was going to do the TV show based on Coast to Coast, I did several pilots taking George Nuri and the notion of Coast to Coast and making it into a sort of an X-Files style drama. And so I had a deal at 20th Century Fox at one point and a deal at Universal. Was it Universal? I think so, yes. And it never came to fruition, sadly, but. At one point, they were considering Michael Piller to be the showrunner on it, and he and I had a conversation to see if we could agree on what the show should be. And it was very clear, very early on, that our aesthetics were totally different. And so he decided, based on that, to not be on that show, and that was fine because it wouldn't, It's like sometimes you just don't have the same viewpoint of things. And it's not that either of you is a bad writer. Pillar was a very talented man, but we just didn't see eye to eye on story often. So, but then he told me he was having problems with cancer and so forth, and I was very sorry that he didn't beat it. I'm very sorry that he died so young. He was, you know, quite a guy. And Star Trek really found its voice and found its form when he came aboard. The first season was very troubled, and then he really kind of pulled it all together into shape. And he's the one who allowed the open door policy where they would read spec Star Trek scripts. And no other show did that because it was such a liability from a legal standpoint. Let's see. Why didn't we go back to the moon? Would be a good story to read. Has it been done? It wasn't made of cheese. um, Rumor has it that Christopher Nolan's toying with a Prisoner remake in movie form, difficult to condense into a single film. Again, until I see it, it could be good, it could be bad. I mean, it was so, for me, The Prisoner was so linked to the whole persona and the whole brilliance of Patrick McGowan that without him, my thought is sort of like, why do it? What's the point? They tried to do a limited series a few years ago, and it was just a disaster. But I did go to where the village was in Portmeirion, Wales, and it's gorgeous and wonderful. And if you're a Prisoner fan, you got to go there. Um, uh, yeah, if you've never seen The Prisoner, the original one with Patrick McGowan, do so. So, The Fugitive was a good remake from series to movie. What happened to Sliders? It took such a dip in quality by season 3. Yeah, I can tell you about that because I was hired on season 4 to fix it. Um, Season 3, it was always an extremely variable show, and I don't think really well. Um, Tracy Torme really wasn't a showrunner in the way that Ron Moore is. It's very hard to run a show. It's very hard to get consistency. And when I saw the pilot of Sliders, I thought that the character Rembrandt, was an appalling negative black stereotype. It's only years later that I learned that Tracy's dad was Mel Torme and that he was basing it on real life singers that he had known. So in that case, you go, okay, then you can give him a pass maybe. But season 3 particularly was a disaster because there was open warfare in the writers' room and between the actors, and it was movie of rip off movie of the week. And so if Jurassic Park was coming out, they do a dinosaur episode. If Twister was coming out, they do a tornado planet episode, or Dr. Moreau episode. Nothing was original, and it was awful. And I only saw the pilot. When I was hired as a producer on Sliders, I'd only seen the pilot. But then I started watching the episodes and seeing what was wrong with them. And because they basically moved the production back from Canada to Universal Studios here in LA, which was great. And they said our marching orders were fix it. It moved from whatever channel, Fox. It moved from the Fox channel to Sci-Fi, and they said fix it. So we did. And because I was a science fiction writer, I knew how to fix it. Which was what I gathered the other writer producers together. And I said, look, this show has a great idea, which is someone jumping from world to world to world, parallel Earths. And first of all, we must not rip off movies. We must do original stories that no one has ever seen that are fresh and explore this premise. And so I watched the show and I watched other movies because I wanted to see, like, the actress, um, Carrie Wurr, who played the female lead on our show by the time I got to it. They were saying, well, fire her, she's terrible, she doesn't seem military. And I watched the Sliders episodes and she wasn't convincing. But then I watched Anaconda, and she was great. So I found out what she was good at, and I then wrote to that, and it worked. The first one I wrote, I think, was World Killer, where they go to a world where a duplicate of Quinn turned on his sliding machine, and it slid everyone else but him to a parallel Earth, and he thinks he just destroyed everyone. He thinks the last man on Earth, and he killed everyone. So our guys show up and say, no, 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 let's go see what you did. And they go to the world that everyone slid to, and it's a world that doubled in population instantaneously. And so as a result, it's a dying world. And so our guys have to decide what to do about that. It was really fun. So my time on Sliders, I really enjoyed it. I wrote a number of episodes that don't even have my name on them because if it was a freelance script, even if I did a page 1 rewrite, I wouldn't put my name on it because then I would be stealing half the residuals of the writer, and I never wanted to do that. So there's many, many of them. I'd say of that season, 19 of the 22 I either outlined, wrote in its entirety, fixed, did something major on. Um, but I was very proud of the work we did on Sliders, and I really, really enjoyed it. So we got about maybe we can maybe take one more question. Let me see. Um, yeah, I like the Equalizer movies. I think they're a lot of fun. Particularly the ones with Denzel. I haven't seen the Queen Latifah one. I mean, there's a whole genre of movie that I actually like. and it's a TV show, and it's basically you fucked with the wrong guy. And that can be true of Reacher. That can be true of Equalizer. It's many, many, many films, and it's a formula that almost always works because it's so much fun to see someone just kick ass. And so it's I really like that format. Um, let's see. I'll just answer one or two more questions, and then Joel Engel's biography of Roddenberry mentions in detail how he used to toy with submitted scripts incessantly, no more so than Harold Livingston for Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Untouched script better. I haven't read it, so I can't comment. The only thing I have said on this little share is that Alien 3 by William Gibson is completely different and enormously better. A fan put together the graphic novel of that and the audio play. So if you go to Mr. Sci-Fi and type in Alien 3 or William Gibson's Alien 3, you can find it, and it's quite wonderful. I highly recommend it. So, but in terms of Roddenberry mucking with scripts, I don't know. I mean, not my department. But Joel Engel, I know Joel Engel. I think he's a really nice guy, but I didn't like his biography of Serling. The whole thing trope that Serling was a depressed and sad guy at the end of his life is not true. Not true. Not true. So let's see. Uh, Okay, well, thanks. So I'll be here next week. Yes, that'll probably be the last one I do for a while, but but I'll maybe next week we'll do 6 to 7 or 5:30 to 6:30. I'll announce it, but I want people to be able to enjoy this. But please go to the Kickstarter campaign and throw some money our way, even if it's a small amount, because every time I go to the Kickstarter campaign and it hasn't budged, I despair, and when it has budged, I cheer. And we have 7 days to get to 50,000. We've got 24,000 right now. And if you buy Space Command shares, you can put them in the campaign, and you'll get a Space Command share, and you'll also get the perks. If you want to give more than the 10,000, we can call me 323-363-1259, and we can talk about that, or markzikri@gmail.com. I'm happy to make your dreams come true if I can. So that's about it for now. Thanks so much, guys, and really enjoy seeing you all. If you're going to be at the Star Trek convention in Vegas, come up and say hi. And we'll talk next time. Okay, guys? You take care. Bye.